So excited to see so many faces in the room for the school board meeting tonight. We're calling the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. It's Wednesday, May 6th. And this is the Montpelier-Roxbury Board of School Directors. I see we have a lot of folks in the room. Just to orient everybody to the agenda, we'll start with public comment. So there might be folks who are here to make a comment on something that's either on the agenda for tonight or just future business of the board. I believe we also have some students from Union Elementary School to make a presentation. That will happen shortly after public comment. And we also, I believe, have some students here interested in the board representative, the student representative positions on the school board. That will happen after the student presentation. So, and we'll walk you through all of that. So that is the beginning of our meeting, and then we'll have even more board business after that. I just didn't want anybody to feel like you were going to miss your opportunity to speak if you didn't jump right away. And before we move into public comment, I wanted to just start by saying Happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all of our educators and our staff. Obviously, we appreciate everything our teachers do all year round, but definitely want to show that appreciation this week. So big thank you to our fabulous MRPS staff for everything they do to share their time, their talents, their efforts with our students and make Montpelier-Roxbury schools as awesome as they are. I also don't want to forget that last Friday, the 1st, was Principal Appreciation Day. And so just a big shout out to our great school administrators, school principals and assistant principals. And I heard that our UES teachers actually celebrated Miss Whalen by dressing like her on Friday. So
Carrie, do we have pictures of this?
Props for the, that might need to go in the next.
Somehow that hasn't gotten to me.
District newsletter. Props for the creativity there. All right, with that, let's go to public comment. If there's folks in the room who have anything they want to share with the board, this is a chance for the board to simply hear from the public on, like I said, items that could be on the agenda for tonight or are on up for future board consideration. So we'll start with anybody who's in the room who would like to make public comment. And then if there's anybody who's online who would like to make public comment, you just need to use the raise hand function, which is at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And that will allow our hosts to pull you into the speaker's queue. So we'll start with folks in the room.
Who's to raise hands or line up, or how would
Why don't you raise hands so we know who we've got? Two in the room so far, and you can always change your mind and decide later to speak a public comment. So we'll do the 2 folks in the room first. All right, come on up. You can take a seat. And when you speak, first of all, I myself am a nervous public speaker, so it's okay if you need to take your time and take a deep breath. Please start by stating your name and where you live for the record.
Okay. Hello, my name is Snipe Brett. I live in Montpelier. I'm a student at MHS, and I'm on the track team, which has been really great. I started at MHS this fall, so I've only been at the high school for this year, but I've been part of like a running community in Montpelier in this area, and just on my previous track team, I've seen the way Montpelier's track team, how they work, how they really are a great team and everything. And I want to talk to you today about our track and field facilities. And I really believe that an update would just strengthen our team, strengthen this community even. Because right now we're running on a dirt track, and on days like today, it gets really wet. It gets really it gets like muddy and everything. It's not ideal. It's not ideal for training. And this isn't sorry.
Okay, good. You're fine.
Anyways, I believe our track team has a lot of potential, and we've worked with what we have, and we've done really well. We have amazing athletes, and I've seen so much dedication and hard work and just a real passion for the sport and everything. And I've seen just awesome coaching, like people who've showed up and been there and put in all sorts of effort. We got Jim here. He's been great. He's been awesome, and it's really great to see. And then on top of that, we have a running community in Montpelier in this area, and they've all been so uplifting and encouraging to one another. And I think seeing all the fruit of our labor that we've put into our track and field team, I think just having like possibly an updated track, like just better facilities for this would just like kind of tie the knot on what we've got going. I know, at least from my perspective as a student, Montpelier High School, I think, is seen as like a beacon for education. We have great academic programs and everything, which is true. We do, but I think our athletics often gets overlooked sometimes and goes unnoticed. But the truth is, we have amazing athletes, amazing coaches, and stuff. So I'd really just like to see what we can do in the future, and yeah, how we can support our athletes here. Right. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Evening, folks. Jim Eikenberry, Montpelier resident, your high school track coach. And just really appreciate tonight sharing what she shared. I'll talk to you tonight about joy. We went to South Burlington at a meet called the Twilight Meet last week. There were only 35 teams there, over 1,000 teenagers. And most of them were there from 10 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. And they had so much fun. They were hanging out, meeting new kids, being athletic, being positive. It was like a festival. I took photos of some of our team members that during the 4x4, the music was going, athletes were running, they were spontaneously like jumping and backflipping and having the time of their lives. No drugs, no alcohol, positive vibe, and in a competitive and cooperative environment. And the joy there was 10 out of 10. And it wasn't an accident. We've got to get the right context for our students to be supported. Part of that is facilities, part of that is staff. I think this school does an amazing job on the academics and on the clubs and the co-curriculars. I've seen our numbers, the participation rates are sky high. It's exceptional. It makes us the envy of other schools. I know kids on our track team and other kids I know who they want to come to MHS because it's different than their school. Not knocking the other schools, but these kids want to come here. They chose our school. And I think part of how we survive what is happening in the greater situation around us in school finance, in state financial realities, is that we don't allow ourselves to have the death of 1,000 cuts, that we choose strategically where we invest and where we have vision, and we're not afraid to have that vision if we can get community support for that vision. So I know we're a long road from the $1.8 million to the track program. I am profoundly grateful for the $400,000. It got us a safe and modern throwing facility that one of our top throwers says is the best in the state. That's something to be proud of. It's something that if we had other great facilities, we would have a meet here. We're really close to pole vaulting in Montpelier after who knows how many decades. That's super exciting. Same thing for the jumping, and like we're so close. I think we should have at least a committee that is part of operations that thinks, okay, we still have to be fiscally responsible. We've got to replace the windows at UES, and at the middle school. Like, that's a priority, no doubt. We got to make sure we're doing right on so many other fronts. And could we have somebody who could help us think, like, how do we write grants? How do we get money? How do we do community fundraising so that we could have matching funds? I'd like, what's that look like, right? I'd love for us to keep exploring that and to think about what could the next step be that maybe isn't all that we dream of, but is a step closer to it. So I'd love for it not to be an end after the $400,000, like track done, but like, awesome, we made that. Let's have a vision for what next would look like. Let's be fiscally realistic and let's see what other sources of funding are. And let's see if we can cobble something together. So we're willing to work and to help. We've got so many great people on our team and volunteers. And I believe that there's community support. I see people on that track all the time, even under pretty crazy conditions. I remember Libby seeing that. So like, there are users who might be willing to shell out a couple $100 to seed a fund to maybe make things good happen, and MHS Pi could help out. So let's form a coalition of the willing, and let's see what we can magic up. Other things real quick. There's no way our school has the ability to pay head coaches commensurate with the amount of time they put in. I almost wish we didn't. I almost wish the funds that, and maybe I'm alone on this, they're gonna yell at me, later. I almost wish the funds would go towards a better equipment budget for my team, because that's what I'm spending the money on. And I know that the ski coaches tell me they spend all that money that after taxes gets taken out, and then they buy ski wax and everything else. And so if there's a way within union negotiations and all this stuff to have a prudent, just like, instead of $2,000, and then after that, somebody nets whatever after taxes, $2,000 that goes to like buying the new javelin or the new, it's like $600 for a pole vault pole. And like, just everything's expensive. And I'd rather have funds go to that, because I'm volunteering. I ran the numbers. By the end of this season, I'll have given you guys $20,000 to $30,000 of my time since January. And it's because that's what I want to do with my time. My family supports that. And this team deserves it. And we want to keep the dream alive that Nathan helped build. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have anyone online?
We have them, but they're hand.
No hands raised. Okay. All right. So then we will move on to the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And this is one that will simply be, I'm looking at my parliamentarian, accepted unless a board member raises their hand to pull something off.
Yep.
So this is an opportunity for board members to pull something off of the consent agenda for discussion or questions.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make a comment about one thing on the superintendent's report.
Sure.
Libby, I just really wanted to call out, it was really wonderful to see the language you have here on about the shift from truancy towards support for chronic absenteeism. So really felt proud that you guys are kind of leading the charge on that shift, and really appreciated seeing it, obviously with everything else wonderful in that report too, but thank you for that.
Great. Thanks, Bella. Anybody else? All right, then we will move on to our,
I think we have to vote on it, but it doesn't need to be moved.
oh, really?
Yes.
That's very confusing to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? All right, thanks, Scott. All right, now we will move on to the presentation from our students from Union Elementary. We'd love for you all to come to the front of the room. We don't have enough seats for you all, but I think you're going to figure it out.
Linda, if kiddos are talking, just have them get near that mic. Okay. I've got your slideshow.
Is it, oh, everybody has it, or,
I got it.
okay, we'll see it up here. Perfect.
Maybe. What am I missing? It's like it's my first rodeo.
It's very,
All right, great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. I'm Linda Beaupre, and I'm the assistant principal at Union Elementary School.
And I'm Suzanne Frankie, one of the 2 school counselors at Union.
I'm Carrie Gilman. I'm not going to sit on any of their laps. And I'm new to the Montpelier community as the social emotional learning coach at UES.
I also want to just acknowledge Jessica Simpson, who is on maternity leave, but she's also a part of our group and has been a big part of getting this student advisory going. And we're very, very excited about it. So if you want to look to the next one, thanks. So this will be brief. Each one of us will be just speaking a little bit about how we came to be and what we did in order to get this going. So one of the things that I did was I wanted to do a presentation to the staff about our goal under safe and healthy schools, which was sense of belonging. And so one of the things that I noticed when I was digging into the data was our sense of belonging data right now is pretty stagnant. It's somewhere the last 3 times we've given the SEL survey, it's been 66%, 67% favorable, somewhere around there. And so I was thinking, what can we do to really give students a voice and really have them feel a strong sense of belonging at Union Elementary School?
So Linda came to our resiliency team and talked with us about a way that we might be able to support the students. And Jessica Simpson, myself, and Carrie all quickly volunteered. And because Jessica and I see all students in the school in our role as school counselors, and Carrie works with all of our teachers, and Linda sees everyone. We had all of the pieces that we thought we needed with adults to form a comprehensive team.
One of the things that really drew me to the Montpelier School District was that equity is not just a buzzword. It's an actual tenet that I see lived out every single day. And so when we looked at equitable processes of how we could draw students in, we thought of probably all the barriers to entry. Would the application look too long if it were written in long form? Would it be like, oh, do I have to respond in writing? Oh, I don't like public speaking. And so we tried to consider all points of access for students and thought, how might we cast the biggest net in terms of drawing student leaders, especially those who may quietly lead and not necessarily fashion themselves leaders, but have amazing ideas and very much need representation. And so one of the things that we were really committed to was designing an equitable process by which we could cast the biggest net for our 3rd and 4th graders, so that 3rd graders can kind of get that experience and our 4th graders could appreciate the fact that they are the oldest in our school and soon to be a middle school student. And so we designed an application process that allowed students to communicate in writing, to communicate by interview, to make a dance if they wanted to make a dance, to film themselves if they wanted to. We had kids sitting in our office saying, maybe if I just say what I think, you could write it down for me. And so we really accepted all different forms of application and we got them all. And then went through a fairly rigorous 3-week process by which we considered every single application and looked across committees to see where students had other opportunities to be leaders in our building. And the crew that we have here are some of the most amazing creatures I have ever met. And you are lucky to get them in your middle and high school one day.
So finally, we called all of the students to the auditorium who had applied. I think one of the most beautiful things that I saw was when we started to announce who was going to be the rep and who was going to be the alternates. The children that got called, the rest of the crew clapped, cheered, hugged. It was genuine. It came from the heart. It was the most beautiful thing I think I've ever seen a group of kids do. So it was pretty amazing to watch all of that. And yes, did some kids have disappointment? They did, but the way they dealt with that disappointment was pretty amazing. So I just needed to let you know that because these kids are pretty awesome. And what you're about to hear in just a few minutes is all from them. So, right.
Okay, I am not going to read all of this to you, but we asked for a number of topics of things that made Union Elementary a great place to be. And there's a visual representation up there. The tick marks represent things that were voted on more than once. It is not lost on us that teachers beat out good food by just a couple. Often the teachers are the purveyors of the good food. So in fairness, those combine. But this represents what's really important to our third grade. That is things that they really loved. You look. Here's one thing that they wanted to change. They definitely have some opinions about chocolate milk. Miss Beaupre is going to be talking about that. They do. And also how they spend their time. You know, we heard our track coach talk about joy, and we have to remember that our playgrounds are a sense of joy for so many of our kids, as are times that they get to spend together. You see recess on there. You see moments where they want to sit together in cafeteria tables. Many of them talked about having round tables. They actually want to see each other. And yes, there are things about climbing, and they want to porta potty on the on the playground. So you can get on that board, but it represents things that they also thought we could make changes.
The fourth grade also did a really nice job of summarizing things that they thought were great. I, again, would point out the things that they said about our teaching staff, that they feel like they're helpful and nice and that they listen. I thought for fourth graders, this was kind of an amazing list of things that they thought on their own were great about our school. Very proud of that. They also had some ideas about things they could change. A lot of things about the schedule. Longer lunch, longer recess. It's hard to do both of those, but you know. And they wanted more assemblies and celebrations. There was a big discussion about our new fence around our playground, and Mrs. Beaupre did a really nice job of explaining why the fence was where it was. And they had some ideas about maybe how we could change that in the future to allow them to have some opportunities to slide and do things like that, because now it's a little tricky to stand up at the top. And they want more pizza at lunch. So all great things.
So what we did was we compiled all of that information, and we made categories and combined some of the things that they said together. And so we presented this to the students, and they voted on the top 3 that you're going to hear about in just a minute. Yes, chocolate milk is one of them. There's some big concerns about the trees on our playground and not being taken care of. So there's a group that will talk with you a little bit about that. And then there's another group that's going to talk to you about Popcorn Mondays, which will now be on Fridays, I believe. All right. So we're going to get to it.
All right. We had 3 members of our committee, and one of them was not able to be here tonight. They had to choose between Girl Scouts and this, and Girl Scouts won, but that's okay. So Nika and I are here to talk about their idea of how we could be kind to trees at our school. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mika, and I'm in 4th grade, and I'm in Stokes class, and I'm in the group being kind to trees.
And then our other representative is Ida York, who is in 3rd grade, and she's in Miss Voorhees' class.
Students decide our trees needed to be taken care of. They are important because maple trees provide
And Ida thought it was important to share that they provide oxygen and cleaner air and nuts and food for animals.
We wanted to let people know to take care of them.
And then we made this poster. It will be copied and laminated and put on the trees on our playground. So we're making those posters and they'll be hanging very soon. And then the last thing we wanted to say together is trees need you and we need trees. Thank you, Mika.
All right, popcorn committee, come on up. We know that food is a currency at UES, and so I'd like to thank Francis's family for making some treats for the board members. And so I'm gonna let you all take it away while I make my rounds over.
Hi, we are the group representing Popcorn Fridays. My name is Cristiano Sasso-Corpio. I'm in 4th grade, and Miss Sites is my teacher, and I'm representing the group Popcorn Fridays.
My name is Frances Doyle. I'm in 4th grade. My teacher is Miss Seitz, and I am representing Popcorn Fridays.
Hello, my name is Liz Yondell. I am in 4th grade. My teacher is Miss Pierce. My group is representing Popcorn Friday. Hi, my name is Violet Canizzo. I'm in 4th grade. My teacher is Miss Pierce, and the group I'm representing is Popcorn Mondays.
Hold on.
Hi, my name is Kendrick Adams. I am in 4th grade. My teacher is Miss Ames, and the group I am in is Popcorn Fridays. And my job is to give the level of popcorn to other people, and this is a celebration.
Hi, we are representing the group Popcorn Fridays.
The members of our group are Chris, Ilham, Francis, Liz, Cassandra, Violet, and Kendrick.
Our first step was to figure out who might be able to help us. We know that Miss Jenna in the front office knows everything. Liz Faust and I came up with a list of questions that needed answers.
We will have to start preparing all the bags on Thursday to get enough ready for all of the students at UES.
One of the most important questions was whether or not we can use the machine. Miss Jenna said that adults had to pop, but our group is in charge of the distribution. Next, we had to ask about allergies. Jenna said in order to be really careful, the only topping we could use is salt.
We also wondered if we could seek parent volunteers to help us with popcorn. Miss Jenna suggested that Miss Whalen could put it in the soup scoop.
One of the final questions was how many bags we would have to pop. The total was 400 bags. Thank you.
Everyone on our committee will load up a car with enough bags for each class. We will deliver them during choice or snack time.
Our goal is to make it so everyone in our school can enjoy school more. We want to bring joy into all the classes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
My name is Ellie Keegan. I'm in 3rd grade. I'm in Miss Cruikshank's class, and the group I'm representing is Chocolate Milk.
My name's George. I'm in fourth grade. I'm in Miss Angela's class, and my group is chocolate milk. My name is Oren Seymour. I'm in third grade. My teacher is is Brendan McLean, and my group is chocolate milk. My name is Josie Weeper. I am in fourth grade, and my teacher is Miss Ames, and I'm representing chocolate milk.
And we had another person in our group, Anvi Magala, and she's not here with us tonight. So I am actually going to read, she was supposed to go first, so I'll read what she wrote. So before we even started to talk about things to discuss in our group, someone brought up chocolate milk at our very first meeting. This topic became very popular fast. Everyone cheered when it was said. We knew right away that this was going to be a hot topic. We used to have chocolate milk here. Why was it taken away? Elliot will now read the letter that we wrote to Mrs. Webb asking to have chocolate milk back.
We met with Miss Webb and read her the note we wrote. I will read that to you now. Dear Miss Webb, the student advisory group has been talking about the cafeteria offering chocolate milk. Many students are hoping to get it back on the menu because we know it used to be on the menu. It's not fair that the middle school gets that choice and we don't. Can you tell us why you took it off the menu? We have been doing some research, and some things our school serves almost have the same amount of sugar as chocolate milk. For example, the fruit cups and syrup have 18 grams of sugar. Do you know that 1 tablespoon of maple syrup is 20 grams of sugar? Here are some other facts. Chocolate milk, 21 grams. Strawberry fruit cups, 16 grams. Pineapple tidbits, 20 grams. Mandarin oranges, 22 grams. Further research showed that fat-free and reduced fat milk has even less sugar. It has 38% less sugar. We also think that students would drink more milk if you offer chocolate milk. One idea, we could replace the chocolate milk with some other things. So instead of serving a fruit cup one day, serve the chocolate milk. When we first talked about the student advisory, we wanted chocolate milk every day. After we talked, we decided it was important to start small. We were asking to have chocolate milk served 3 times before the end of the year. Thank you for listening to our request. The student advisory group for chocolate milk, Elliot, George, Josie, Harvey, and Owen. One question you heard in the letter was why chocolate milk was taken away. Because we used to have it. Miss Webb told us that after COVID, it didn't come back. The sugar was high in chocolate milk, so she didn't bring it back. Now there's less sugar, so Mrs. Webb is willing to bring it back. Mrs. Webb was very impressed with the research we did. She said she would be willing to serve chocolate milk 2 to 3 times before the end of the school year. We have one more thing to figure out. Chocolate milk costs more money than regular milk. Anyone that gets hot lunch will get chocolate milk. But if you bring a home lunch, you'll have to pay 50 cents. We are now trying to figure out how we can raise enough money so everyone can get chocolate milk that wants it without having to pay for it.
I think we can figure that out. Something. Everything.
All right.
You know, on the chocolate milk last year, it was last year when we had the emergency at UES, we had no water at UES. Was that last year, Linda? 2 years ago. And the kids came here and we're in here for lunch. We had chocolate milk and they drank it all. There was no more chocolate milk left.
It might have been the seed was planted.
Yes, exactly. We all back in our school.
Is that everything?
That's it.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to
So, moving on to the next item on the agenda, I apologize to our students looking to represent students on the board. You do need to follow that. I think we have Julian in the room yeah. You may come to the front and tell us a little bit about yourself. As board members know, we have letters of interest from 6 students. And every student was invited, but we're not requiring them to attend in order to make the appointments. And many students who wrote us letters said they would wish they could be here, but have a different commitment tonight, like driver's ed or soccer practice, that is getting in the way of being here this evening. But Julian, you were able to be here. Is there anything more you'd like to share with us that beyond your letter to start?
My name is Julian Carrier. I'm a rising ninth grader, and I just sort of wanted to say thank you guys for providing this awesome opportunity to like engage in like a democratic institution to help like support the student voice and help our peers. So I think it's just really amazing that you guys did this. So, yeah.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you guys.
And if there are board members that have questions for Julian, just to know if there's anything you're looking to know about him that would help you make the decision, this is the time to ask. We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Julian. And we are going to make that decision at the end of the meeting. You may stick around if you'd like. You're also don't have to. So also, once again, not required. Yeah. All right. So then we're going to move on to looking at the development of board principles, norms, and protocols. Libby, are you able to pull up that Google Doc so we can have it on screen, please?
I'm just still blown away by the awesomeness of.
I know. Yeah, it takes a little bit to recover from that.
I was just kind of thinking about it and smiling, quite honestly.
So as Libby's pulling that up, I'll just open up the overview with file this one under, I guess, better late than never. This is a recommendation from the SBA and many other scholars of school board governance that boards have codified for themselves a set of principles, norms, and operating protocols, which we have not yet done as the Montpelier-Roxbury School Board. So we're starting fresh, and it's essentially they're valuable because then along with our mission statement and vision for our district, these things are principles, norms, and operating protocols, basically just help guide us in working together as a cohesive team while still, bringing our individual selves and our individual perspectives. This is a very rough draft. I find it easier when a group of people is working together to have something to react to rather than starting with just a blank page. So I drafted these up from recommendations that I found from Elaine Pickney, who conducted our training at the last board meeting, from the governance core book that she recommended, and then the sort of pamphlet on the 8 characteristics of an effective board that Libby shared with us at the first board meeting after town meeting day. So these are drawn from those sources with a little bit of my own thinking, but also still very much in draft form. And as I said to the board, we're not going to decide on these tonight because I was really only able to share these with you by like midday today. But this is a chance to take a first look at them, ask questions, think to yourself about, okay, what would it look like to act within these? And then we'll come back to them for more, firm edits and finalizing them at a future board meeting. I don't think I should just read. I'm not going to just read down the list because I think board members can pull it up in front of them and that just feels a little bit redundant. So mostly I'll just leave it there as far as an overview for what these are and open it up to any initial reactions or questions that people have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you pulled from the SBA and like a few maybe a few other pieces for ideas. Like I'm wondering like what you saw that you chose maybe not to include that you thought didn't fit within
Yeah.
principles.
I think it was a little bit more of a like mostly I was doing like here's where it feels like it would make sense for us. So here's one. All team members will offer their ideas and resources isn't really in here, but not that it couldn't be. It's just that I feel like it's maybe represented in a different way in what's written up there. So that's one example to answer that question. Anyone can call it timeout if he or they feel they need a break. There's another one I didn't really, that felt like it was getting more granular than we needed, but again, this is very, very rough first draft.
And the boards like kind of all land in different places with this?
Yes, and one thing that I read actually recommended that we start with a blank slate because the conversation to establish these is a very valuable conversation. So rather than just copy pasting what some other board uses and just being like, hey, those look good to us, it is valuable for us to have a conversation about them. But like I said, when it comes to working on things as a group, I find it more helpful to have something to react to, but I do also want to cultivate the conversation around them. So it's not just like, yeah, these look good and let's adopt them. So that's why we're not going to just like check that box tonight. We're going to give ourselves a little bit more time.
I appreciate the draft. I think it's good. It's a strong start for sure. I think it covers a lot of ground and a lot of different facets of how we probably want to think about how we do the work, how we show up, how we engage. So thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Tonight, how specific do you want feedback to be?
If you've got it, I would say let's hear it. And then I think we'll like take notes and then figure out how to use it when we get to the point of finalizing them. Yeah.
You can scroll up. Keep going. Sorry. Sorry.
I do appreciate that you zoomed in. so
Yeah,
we can
agreed. That's fine.
I can see
It's under the principle.
the principles. Okay.
Yep. I really like the word wellness there because I think we have a lot of ways in this district that we talk about belonging and we talk about kind of the whole student learner and I think the word wellness there is a nice one. I can't think off the top of my head of an example that would fall outside of this, but I think my lawyer brain is a little worried about the our governance realms one.
Okay.
That might be limiting. And so that would just be one to flag to make sure that we're not limiting our authority in some way or giving the appearance that we're limiting it by listing that. I think you're getting towards sort of like current committees and areas of oversight, but I just would want to make sure that it serves a purpose and that the purpose is not limited.
Okay.
Thinking about in the norms, we maintain a high standard of integrity following through and what we say we'll do. If what we say we're gonna do spurs a massive backlash, we back up and we revisit it and we change our mind. So I don't know how we want to think about that. I mean, I would like it if that was true and we made a decision and we just stuck with it. I would like that. I think that would be cool. But that's not apparently realistic. And so I just think that that's, and I think about the word govern and I'm not sure what I think about that word generally. It feels like more influence or I don't a governor wields a veto pen for instance, and we don't have that kind of influence in the same way. So I don't know if that just not to throw the word away, but just thinking about what words describe what it is that we're doing here.
Yep. That's a good example, Red, of a word that came from the language where I don't know if it was where I found it, but that's like that, whatever that source's language is, and maybe it's not language that makes a word that makes sense for us. So
I'm not
that's just a
sure
good
one way
example of.
or another, just something I'm
Yeah.
thinking about.
I agree on the following through on what we say we'll do, just because I think we have projects also that maybe some of us will never see, to completion if they're multi-year projects. And I think we want to also have the ability to adjust and be flexible. It may have made sense to start off with 5-year plan 4 years ago, and now COVID has happened or something has come through. So I think I get the intent here, which is, that we're we say what we mean, right? Using all the information that we have, we try to make the best decisions that we can. It kind of gets to the first one you had there about, we planning for the future based on the information that we have. But I do agree that that feels maybe a little more like a throwaway, given that, do we mean within one cycle? Do we mean within your 3 years as a board member?
Yeah.
Kind of what do we mean by that? And since we don't have very many of these, I would think each one needs to really be something.
It's very helpful to get that perspective on it, because when I was writing that one, I was thinking more on the tactical, like I'll email you back when I say that I will. So, but it's good to know that other people are thinking about it on that higher level. I'm chime in too, if you have thoughts on anything.
Mia, I was admittedly getting my dinner out at the very beginning and I think I might have just missed. So is this a recommendation by the School Boards Association to have these, or what was the initial motivation that you described and I totally spaced on?
Yeah, I think it's a strong recommendation. Like we're strongly encouraged to have these in place that will foster essentially us modeling the kind of inquiry and collaboration that we would want to see in our classrooms. And they talk a lot of, in this book, The Governance Core, there are some references to it will get, if you've got these in place, you can avoid, like interpersonal issues and whatever, so there's a little bit of they're sort of there for a stopgap, but I think they're also there to give us something to aspire to in terms of leading by example.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing this to the board. I appreciate the work that you've done. The CVCC board has norms at the very beginning of every board meeting.
Yeah.
It's just we look at them very quickly. It's just a reminder that they exist and that they don't just sit on a shelf. And so I like that we're having this conversation. I also think having, I don't know, probably not now, but an opportunity, maybe we break into 3 groups and we have an opportunity, maybe we take what you've started and then talk through what we're doing right now, but in smaller groups, and then have that larger conversation, and whether that's a part of a board meeting or a retreat or what. But if there's not a specific deadline that we need to get it done by, especially for something like this, I think a longer slower process might yield something a little bit more meaningful and useful that we can then look back to, each meeting, just a quick hey, we agreed on these, has anything changed? Otherwise, let's stick with it.
Yep.
And sorry for my smelly dinner
I don't mind
if it's bothering anybody.
Always know it's not.
Okay, good.
Right.
It hasn't made it down there.
Thanks for that.
I do think for that kind of floor conversation, it would be really interesting to hear if there are any norms or principles that come from the district itself, because districts that I've seen, have really consistent norms. It would be familiar to a kindergarten student all the way up to a high school senior to come in front of the board, that the language might not be exactly the same, but some of the same principles or ways of describing interactions would be familiar to them.
So from everyone from kids to staff to administration to the board. So there might be things that are new here and that the district feels like, oh, we don't kind of have a way of addressing that. But I would imagine with all the smart minds in the district as well, there may be things that we can kind of borrow from and reflect some of that same language, so that we're not operating in dramatically different worlds. It'd be interesting to hear from Libby or others, you know, when we have those conversations, how do they describe some of this stuff and are we close?
Yeah, Ella, along those lines, I think you can't turn a corner at UES and not see kind, safe, and responsible on the wall, right? So like, could we just?
Should we just
have
be that?
Could we have that there? You know, because I think there's value in being direct and clear so that when an elementary school student comes to the board, they see that and it's like, oh yeah, them too. Or we all are. I'm not as familiar with what's written on the wall, so maybe I don't want to be of the middle school and the high school, but I'm sure that there's something valuable that we could extract from that too. So I think it would be helpful to have that connection across all three buildings.
The middle school is escaping me right now, but Sam, would you like to tell us what it is at the high school?
I don't think this started a while ago, I think, but I feel like Mr. Gingle does a good job of like really enforcing it at like he has a beginning of the year assembly for every grade. He talks about a couple things that are relevant to that grade, but it's really take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of this place. So it's really about like, it's also sort of like being kind.
Yeah,
like
and safe and
elementary school.
responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a bit of a through line. Any other thoughts on this draft so far?
My only other thought is that we do exist in a wider state, and the state is sort of really considering whether or not and how to change so many things about the way education is funded and supported and how that looks. And I don't know if there's a way to speak to sort of bringing our interests and our values forward when there are massive changes around us, or some way to mention that, because I don't know if changes will be, you know, they're usually not as dramatic as they seem like they will be, but they're still really substantial and cause a lot of stress and pressure.
Something to think about. Okay. Oh,
any specific homework or that as we to come prepared for a future conversation that you would recommend?
I'm gonna read this book.
Yeah.
Let me think about that. I think there are some webinars that VSBA does that are really helpful. That would be like a pretty quick, like 45 minutes to an hour kind of thing. Or Ella's been sharing some podcasts with us. I think those would be good to listen to. And we can consolidate all that in one place, so you don't have to go searching for it in your email all over the place. And yeah, I mean, I found the language around for the context for these principles, norms, and protocols very helpful in this book. So that's, you know, I know we all have limited amount of time, but when we think about, so we'll figure out the right prioritization of things that could help us with the conversation for sure.
We're talking a little bit, I was plugging to Mia the idea of, you know, some sort of like a board book club. It could be like, to Scott's point, that we don't have to read all the chapters, but we could, you know, sign up for specific chapters to read and come and kind of brief on those and then talk about it. Or I've run like articles clubs or book podcast episode clubs before too. So that could be something for us to kind of like share information. And if you want to read more or listen more, great, but you know, so that's kind of shared among us.
Yeah. One of our things is to grow and learn together. So this would be a way of keeping that going throughout the year. All right. Well, we will return to this at a future date to get these in place. thanks everyone for the input. And next up is our long-range financial planning presentation.
Can we, does the board mind if we switch around the opportunity gap and then long range financial?
Not at all.
Because my friend Nicholas is here and
Then you can
and
go.
my friend Michael is not here yet.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Nick, come on up. Great. So as you pull that up, just some context setting. I asked Libby to work with Nick on creating this. This is the first time the board is seeing a training just on this topic. This is partially because it will help us follow our policy of getting a training that is related to equity at least once a year. But it's not just to check the box. This is also something that our administration thinks a lot about when it comes to looking at our student data. And so because part of our job is to monitor student outcomes and how our system is doing at making progress on student outcomes. And this is a big piece of what they look at. This is important for the board to also understand. So that's why we have this tonight.
Yeah, and another bit of the context is that this is a relatively short presentation, if you've had time to flip through it. And it's honestly a setup for what is to come in the next two board meetings, which Nick will join us for in both of those board meetings. Next board meeting, we'll have the assistant principals taking on Jess Murray's role of sharing the SEL data with Nick. And in those SEL presentations, there's always a conversation about the opportunity gap. And then the following board meeting after that will be, the principals will be sharing the continuous improvement plans for next year that have to be redone yearly, in which their goals are based on the opportunity gap or are looking like they will be. I'm looking at Nick because he's been working very closely with them around that. So this is kind of like like just getting the game ready, setting the context for you all. It's not meant to share all the data points. It's not meant to go into data really deeply. You'll get more of that over the next couple of meetings. And then the final board meeting, actually get the academic report with Mike. So then you'll have more conversations about this. So this is just the entryway. So there's a paradigm shift in education in the language we use, from measuring outcomes only to evaluating access also. It's interesting because when this slide was first up, it was one or the other. I honestly, and Nick may disagree with me, it's not one or the other for me. It's you need the outcomes, we need that measurement, and we also need to evaluate the access to those outcomes. So I feel like it's an and, not an or. But we've moved from the achievement gap, which is what you'll see in media, you'll see from most of our state representatives, you'll see that achievement gap language. And achievement gap has been that language has been here for a long time. The focus there is on standardized test scores. It's on the outcomes of what's happening. And when we talk achievement gap, it's the placing the burden on the deficiency of a student or the perceived deficiency of a student. And views performance disparities as a reflection on the student, not on the system in which they enter. And we all know, I know this board has had training in the past around school systems being systemically part of the society we all live in, and that society itself inherently has some biases and racism and all kinds of things built in, and schools are built within that. So we also have that within ours. So we certainly have barriers that we need to figure out how to overcome. By switching our language to opportunity gap, we're talking about the inputs that we're giving to students. So what's the access to high quality instruction look like? What's the resources look like? What does the institutional support look like? So we've talked a lot about multi-tiered systems of support and making sure that we have evidence that that's working for our students. And we don't talk a lot about after school tutoring, for instance, because after school tutoring is a voluntary measure. It's saying, we'll give it to you if you want to come. If you don't want to come, you must not have a parent who will drive you or cares, right? It's the either or mentality. So what we say is, no, we're going to give you that time, that additional time to learn during the school day, not as an additional if you want to or can. So the mentality in an opportunity gap recognizes the systemic barriers. It shifts the responsibility to the school to provide every child what they need to be successful, and recognize that looks very different for different children. If you're a parent of multiple children, you know that one is not like the other and needs different things just in our own homes, right? And every child is like that. Nick, would you like to add on to any of these definitions?
No, I think doing great.
Okay, good. So why this shift is vital? It goes to systemic accountability. We are accountable to our kids, and our customers in this case are our kids. And we want to shift that mentality so that we are responsible to ensure the success of every kid. So we're talking about staffing and funding and curriculum and all of those variables that we have control over, because we have kids for a long time during their day. My kids' school sees my kids way more than I do across a week. So we have a lot of access, and we also have a lot of ways that we can help kids. It speaks to teacher efficacy. When we define this problem as an opportunity gap, we're empowering our educators to take different options, to do different things. And honestly, we're also putting more onus on them in what they do. It's harder to think this way. And that's been a big shift for some of our educators. I'm not gonna lie about that. But it does also in the end free them to say, hey, I made this action and this happened. And that's a good thing for kids, right? It gives them a little bit more power to make changes in their own instructional practices. And then we want to really push for sustainable equity. So that when we start seeing our outcomes kind of roller coastery, and then that tells me that our scores are not dependent on what we're doing on a daily basis, but what the cohort of kids are doing regardless of us. And so we don't want to see kind of these roller coaster scores, because what that's telling me that we're not really looking at what are the structural barriers for different cohorts of kids.
When you say roller coaster, Libby, is that like, a kid in third grade is here, but then down here in fourth grade? Or is
like
that
a cohort of third graders scores really high, and then in fourth grade they score really low, and then in fifth, it's like following the cohort. Or you could look at it from just a year, right? If our scores are like this, and not kind of a solid line across the board, then what that tells me is we're relying on our clientele to get the outcomes. Which is an achievement gap mentality, rather than relying on what we do and what we have control on every day to get the outcomes that we really expect for our kids.
Okay.
That makes sense?
I think so.
Okay. So we rely a lot on Dr. Edward Fergus, and a few years back, we had an equity audit done in our district that you can find on our website. And one of the authors that the people who did the equity audit offered us was the work of Dr. Edward Fergus. He wrote a pretty awesome book that we have referenced, and the leadership team has learned from quite a bit, particularly around this information. And he focuses on 3 bias-based beliefs, on the idea of color blindness, the refusal to acknowledge how race and culture shape student experience, deficit thinking, focusing on students' lack, either at home or at school, or income levels, and poverty discipline, when we view behavior issues as a class issue of something we bring with them because of how much money their parents make. Those are the 3 big bias-based beliefs that Fergus talks about in his work, that we have to think about what are the structures in place that we currently have that buy into these things. Not on purpose, but do. So we have to question some of the things we do a lot and understand, are they within one of these bias-based beliefs? So some of the examples that Fergus gives are curriculum. Is there a lack of clear sequenced instructional goals across grade levels that's creating rigor gaps or curriculum gaps? And we found that in math. We had significant gaps and significant rigor. We were just talking about it, 2 hours ago, Nick, in our leadership team meeting, around levels of rigor that we're offering in math. And one of the reasons why we had that was because we didn't have a common resource, K-12, for teachers to draw from. They were drawing from what they thought they knew, just off the top of their heads. And that was a big gap that created a gap. So we've been working with a math resource K-12 now. And today we're just looking at items on assessments in our leadership team meeting. I was put with the high school level, which as soon as I see a parabola, I kind of shut down, just not going to lie about that. And we were talking about what's the level of rigor this is asking, and do our teachers have the knowledge to teach to that level of rigor to get kids there and understand how to break that down. So through reasoning skills, we were really focusing on math reasoning today. Yeah,
So can I ask a question?
Yeah. Please.
So does that mean that like one grade might teach at a sort of more challenging level and then the next grade? I'm just not sure I understand that rigor gap concept. Like,
So they might not be teaching to the level of rigor of the standard.
okay,
So when I first got here 8 years ago, so mind you, this was a long time ago, and it's not the situation right now, and I want to be very clear about that. I was at a staff meeting at Union Elementary School, and they had not 8 years ago spent a lot of time at Union with the Common Core state standards. That had kind of been teacher dependent. Some teachers had really studied them for their grade levels, and some hadn't. It hadn't been a group effort to study those. And this was, 5 years after Common Core was adopted. And so at that time, some kindergarten teachers, for instance, were going into rounding in kindergarten, rounding numbers. That's not a kindergarten skill. I can remember Ryan Harity at the time saying, why are you teaching that? Like, we need to make sure they have a solid base of number sense. And that's what I've always done, when our kids weren't coming to first grade without a strong sense of number, but could maybe round with a procedural knowledge of how to do that. If it's 5 or more, you can go up, right? That kind of baseline mentality. And there was a lot of conversation in staff meetings at that time where they were writing out their Common Core state standards, and our 3rd and 4th grade team at the time were saying, wait, you teach that? I teach that, so like our 4th grade might be teaching a 3rd grade standard.
okay.
And then why were we wondering that our 4th graders weren't getting the outcomes we were expecting? Because they weren't being taught to a 4th grade level. And it's not a knock on our teachers. That is not our teachers' challenge. It was a systemic, we need to be looking at this better. And so like when we look at our math scores, which are lower than our literacy scores, as you well know, you've seen enough of those presentations by now, we had to ask why, right? And we asked our educators why, and we asked ourselves why. And one of the things that came out was a common resource that defined the rigor for us.
Okay.
That was missing. That was missing. Yeah,
is what you're
was
saying.
missing. That makes sense?
Yeah, like from K to 12.
Yeah.
Like all the way, not just like within a certain grade, but like.
No, yeah, all the way through.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah. Another piece that Fergus really speaks to that we have to ask ourselves about is initiative overload. Do we have too many fixes without strong, equitable core curriculum and common instructional practices that are culturally responsive? And I'll go back.
There's a lot in
There's
that
a lot
check mark right there.
There's a lot there, but I will also tell you, I could pull it up now. The first slideshow I gave to staff 8 years ago, after the summer of my first, July and August of a new superintendent, I put up everything that I had a meeting on in July and August, everywhere from we need a pool to we need more teachers to, it was amazing. And I just put it all up. I was like, I've been in the job for 2 months, and this is what people are telling me are the most important to us right now. And then I had a big X on it that said too much. We can't do that, right? And so we were renowned for doing too much. And so we really focused in on multi-tiered system of support and what that involves. And now we're truly, and getting our core curriculum down, we didn't have one. And then now we're truly digging into common instructional practices by designing our own instructional framework and saying, welcome to MRPS. This is what best practice means to us here at MRPS. So that actually should be a presentation at some point for the school board, because I don't think we've done a presentation on the instructional framework.
No, we have not
So we should put that on our list. And then gatekeeping mechanisms, the subjective requirements that prevent diverse student groups from entering advanced pathways. And this is actually something Matt McLean and the Flexible Pathways crew has spent a lot of time studying of who takes flexible pathways and why, what kind of kid that is. And they've done a real bang up job of making sure that that's equitable access to kids. So I would love to say that these root causes weren't evident here, but they were, and they still are, in terms of the opportunity gap. And we're working every day with our educators to try to move to grow from here.
Can you give us an example of an instructional practice that is culturally responsive?
Well, let me show you real quick. I'm gonna stop sharing for 1 second.
Yeah.
Let me show you real quick what we're designing. And we've started working with our educators on. But I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of this either. So we'll get a presentation on this. How about that?
Yep.
Okay, so let's do this one. So we're working with elements. Sorry, that's just so small. This is one element. It's within the context of teaching, and it's establishing routines, expectations, and procedures. So we've worked, this is based on Marzano's work, but we've taken Bob Marzano is an educational researcher who writes like a book a week. I mean, he does so much educational research. So we're using a lot of his work. And if you can see, I know it's small. I'm looking at Tim right now, straining, right? This is just on establishing expectations and routines, which is a
Like
good
in the classroom.
in the classroom. We have a definition of what it means, importance to culturally responsive instruction. Why is that important? Some example instructional practices that teachers could use, considerations for instructional practice involving culturally responsive instruction. Okay. And then some reflection questions for the teacher to ask themselves, and opportunities for the teacher to gather quick data about their teaching in here. And then each one, because we're a proficiency-based system, has a proficiency scale attached to it.
Wow.
So we're working we're working on designing these elements. We have 12 now. We don't want to make a huge amount, but this is what eventually our teachers are going to be working from as like developing professional goals. But all of them are inclusive of culturally, they all look the same. So culturally responsive instructional practice are built in. So we're defining that as an educator team.
Great. So you have 12 now. What would the full framework look like?
Marzano has 47 of them,
That's a lot.
43. We're not going to have that many. But they're split into 3 areas. They're split into content, context, and assessment and feedback. So we want to make sure that we're spread out. We focus mainly in the beginning, in the first 4, on context, because that's where student engagement and a lot of the equitable practices are found. So we focus there first.
And so I'm guessing these are all any teacher at any level of
they're
teaching.
content-less and age-less.
Yeah.
So you can see yourself.
A 3rd grade teacher and a 9th grade teacher can use
Exactly.
that.
PE teacher can see it, and a school counselor can see it. Yeah. So that's what we're working on in that piece of it. Well, let me get my slides back up. Okay. So we want to see the rising tide of opportunity happen, that the data is indicating, this is back with Fergus, that when gatekeepers are removed, the proficiency of the entire student body increases, not just the underserved group. And that's what we want to see happen here.
Nick, is that something you'd be able to show us eventually in a data presentation?
Yeah, potentially. I think what I appreciate most about this is in the space where we may get pushback. If folks may say you're putting so much energy here to the smaller group of students, my student isn't getting what they need. And what I like about this is like that speaks to like the zero-sum fallacy of if you give to one, you take from another, and that's just not true in this dynamic. So this whole when we address the opportunity gap, we're talking about raising the floor, not lowering the ceiling, is the way that I think about this. And so I would expect to see the gaps close. We hope to see accelerated gains in student populations that may be historically marginalized, that are not hitting the same levels as other students. So we want to see that gap close, but we expect this to continue to move upward. That makes sense.
Have you been here with our new board members yet?
I haven't. I'm Nick.
Oh, sorry, everyone. This is Nick Connor. Nick is our director of engagement, data and engagement, student data and engagement, sorry. And what you said earlier about the superintendent's report, this is the man behind that brilliance. So I'll give him credit where credit is due, because he has changed my mind about chronic absenteeism completely 180. So strategies to increase opportunity, that academic rigor that we were talking about earlier. We want to ensure that everybody in our system is feeling like they belong in our system by using restorative practices to keep students in class. And we actually have some really good data that says we're doing that so much better than what we used to now. So I'm pretty proud of that. And doing the data audits by disaggregating the outcome. One of the things past board members have been, I'd say disappointed is the right word, is because some of our N sizes for disaggregating the data are so small, we can't share it publicly. Rest be assured, we do talk about that inside our leadership team meetings, and we are looking at that quite a bit, as you'll see as evidence when the CIPCs are shared, most definitely. So we are looking at our data in a disaggregated way. So we want to think about, oh, that's pretty small, sorry, board members. Access, instruction, what's the social stuff going on, and how do we support our kids? Yep.
We're talking about kind of our experiences showing up with us as board members. And so from the land of a very big state that I was on the board of, they have very much moved toward massive focus on belonging at the detriment of academic rigor. And so I just want to very much applaud the idea that it needs to be both. And there are a lot of schools down there that I think kind of the mentality was, once everybody is like emotionally okay, then we'll start the teaching. And no one is ever 100% okay. Teaching has to also occur along with. So, you know, I think it's very alluring to talk about restorative practices, to do all the social emotional stuff, and to remember that we are also a school district. And to not lose track of that. I just say that as a cautionary tale from other places that have really gone so far in the other direction. And I think with the best intentions, you know,
and I can say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like, this is like some near and dear to my heart. I think we do mix up some SEL pieces a bunch for an excuse for performance, or for, you know, they're not ready to learn. Right, is something that I used to hear a lot. I don't hear a lot anymore. Quite honestly, I just don't anymore. I used to hear it a lot more. But also, you know, if a kid is doing something wrong in the classroom, it becomes an SEL skill. And it's like, well, no, what's your routine look like? You know, like, let's talk about routines first. And so that we still need to have that switch a little bit. You know, occasionally it's a good crutch or excuse. So we're still thinking about our language there, but I don't know if this community would ever let us get that academic rigor off the slide either. Yeah. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
I think it shows up more with the word behavior, right? That's sort of the code for not ready to learn yet.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, with the behaviors, or the behaviors we see like that. So that is sort of to me, the new coded language around, well, they're not ready yet. And there has to be a point where, like you said, we look at also the academics.
Yeah. What are we doing?
Yeah.
So access, in terms of the intervention strategy, we like to think about open enrollment for higher level coursework. We're trying to get away from the idea of recommendations for higher level coursework from adults. We're looking at those flexible pathways and how can we ensure that learning isn't just defined within the four walls of a classroom, but there's lots of opportunity. That is a big time value, particularly here at the high school. But also we've grown in the middle, in the elementary school, you saw tonight, a flexible pathway, and then in the middle school with the sustainability and STEM lab, that's kind of the scaffolded work to get to flexible pathway work here at the high school. So we want to increase the participation of underrepresented groups in those rigorous opportunities and really track it. And we have that data for flexible pathways. Last year was something like, I've shared that with the board. I think it was like 90% of the seniors, graduating seniors last year had done at least one flexible pathway, if not multiple. The instruction, we're working on the instructional framework and continuing to push on proficiency-based learning because there's still some misunderstandings of what proficiency-based learning is. And so thinking about that work because that is equitable practices. We want to reduce the academic discrepancies by providing multiple ways to engage in the learning. And you know who has been marvelous of that is Joe Carroll. When he was a Latin teacher, whenever I was in his classroom, I always saw multiple ways for kids to access Latin. Right? He's a marvelous Latin teacher. He's a very good pathway teacher now too, but he was marvelous at that. We want to look at the intervention strategy there is through restorative practices with ongoing circles, which have mixed reviews sometimes from students and mediation between students to decrease, the exclusionary disciplinary practices that we were seeing and increase student time on task. This is a tricky one. I'll share because when kids have trouble and the parents are involved, parents want discipline. So restorative practices sounds pretty good until your kid gets hit or your kid gets bullied or, so, and it's understandable. And at the same time, it's an education process, I think. And then supports, what's our targeted intervention and remediation within the day so that high levels of learning supersedes time it takes to get there. So it shouldn't be the unit's over, we're done, you learned it or you didn't. We're saying we're guaranteeing the learning there. So we need to provide the opportunity, the time in order to get to that learning. And that looks different for each kid. Please, Sam.
Flexible pathways. Yes, I just want to sort of plug the flexible pathways team because they do a really good job. I'm in one right now that is like allowing me to shadow a senator at the state house one day a week, and it's just like it's really cool the opportunities you get to do because you could do basically anything.
Yeah.
To explore anything you want, and it's really cool.
It's very cool. Yeah. Find out which senator you're shadowing, and if we can get in their ear a little bit, things.
I'm not sure I'm going to say this, but because I'm sort of processing on the fly, but what I'm hearing from you is that if there's a significant change in the way the district is seeking to like approach how we connect with kids in the classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm from I always think of like the customer experience in the district. Like we're asking teachers to deal with not one, third grade customer segment, but maybe in a classroom of 20, like there are maybe 20 different learners. Hopefully it's not 20 different learners, that there's a way to sort of like group them in a way where you're managing and teaching and exposing these kids to the content in maybe 4 different ways or 3 or 5 different ways. But that seems like a huge shift that's a huge change management process, right? So you're asking maybe a teacher who's been in the classroom for 15 years, right? Because this is a relatively new approach in the district. Like how have you seen that? Like to me, that it like requires just a lot of different thought, maybe a lot of different training. It seems huge to me as a layman, and so it seems important, but it also seems really difficult to do so that you're not losing the fray, right? Like that you're not, if there's a group of students who need a lot more extra time on the topic, and there's a group of students who don't need a lot of extra time on the topic, and they're in the same classroom, that teacher's navigating all of that. Like I guess my question, and maybe this is like, we'll have coffee later, but like, I don't see how you easily do that. And like, again, I've had conversations with a couple people like, that's not how it worked when I was in school 1,000 years ago. And so it's hard for me to even fathom how we're asking a teacher in a classroom with 20 customers who want and need different things to deliver for them in a way that in the end, they're all like, that wasn't easy, right?
So the first thing I'll say is I was a second grade teacher for 8 years, 10 years. And it's every classroom, including the ones we grew up in, had differentiated learners, right? Like they were
Right.
there.
Yeah, no, totally.
Whether we were servicing them well or not is a different thing.
You totally weren't, or at least not in my experience.
The second thing that kind of jumped to my mind just as you were speaking is that there is nobody who thinks teaching is easy. Like it is the most complex job there is. And anybody who does think that it's easy, let's go back to COVID and remind people what that was like for them when their teachers weren't there, right? And so like it is complex and we need to ensure that we acknowledge that, right? And we have to have systems of support in there. So we haven't had an MTSS presentation since you've gotten here, but that's when we're talking about multi-tiered systems of support, there's definitions and there's help that comes, right? And we have time structured in a day to give teachers that support and to give kids time. We've also done training like in something like Math Menu, which is an inherently differentiated structure in math where kids are provided work at things they need to practice while the teacher can pull small groups, and so the kids are all doing different things in their menu, whatever their menu is telling them to do while the teacher can work with a small group of kids, so like we're trained to do that. I can honestly say we need to get better at it here. And how do we run small groups and have kids working independently? So like, and it's across the board K-12, right? At the 12th grade, I see a lot of whole group teaching. And at the elementary school, I see a lot of non-important independent task or learning like behaviors, not learning behaviors, learning tasks during independent time. So like we have a lot of work to do there. But it goes back to it's complex and like there's always growth to be had.
That's helpful. I just learned a lot more about Math Menu, which we talk about at the dinner table all the time.
It's a tool.
That's what that is. Okay, no, thanks for that.
Go ahead, Jake.
I think my question is like sort of related to Justin's is, in this kind of paradigm, how do you make sure that students are resilient? Like if a student is having a hard time, and the expectation is that the teachers and the district are gonna do something about it, and the expectation of the family is also like the district, the teachers are falling short, like where does the student get the motivation to change, like what their own approach?
I think I'd want to know more about that question. The very first thing that popped in my brain, and Nick's heard this a whole bunch, I do believe, and the board's probably heard this too, I do believe that we don't have our kids fail enough here. I think our kids come from very privileged spaces and they are very successful a lot of the time, and we don't have them fail in worthwhile pursuits. So what I mean by that is like put them in a problem that they don't have the answer to, and me as a teacher, I don't have the answer either. And so I can help facilitate you through that frustration. Like I don't see us teaching that kind of resilient learning behavior where it's a complex problem, figure it out, or at least get close to it. I don't think like the idea that a kid, I think what you're getting at, and I don't know if so, correct me if I'm wrong, if a kid messes up with behavior in some way, like the punishment or discipline piece of that, is that what you were getting at?
I was thinking more academics.
Okay, tell me
I was
more
thinking
then.
like, a student, is just like not doing well in whatever class. From the first couple slides, it seems like the thinking of the staff is like, what can I do to provide for that student?
Yeah.
And like, so where does the student's motivation come from to do something different about their approach? Like, because it sounds like it's not it can't be their approach that's the issue. It has to be the approach of the learning system, the district, the teacher, or whatever.
It looks like,
I think I know what you're asking a little bit. When we're talking about opportunity gap, oftentimes we're talking about specific student populations, identities, or life events. So let's say young people who are experiencing homelessness, right? When I'm thinking, and when we're talking about opportunity gap, I'm thinking about this population. Is there a gap in their experience versus the broader population? So specifically speaking to the opportunity gap, it is not the young person's identity or life experience that dictates their motivation, that dictates their academic abilities. It really is systemic in that how can we better serve these students to meet them with cultural responsiveness, using language that makes sense to them. So in the context of opportunity gap, that's how I would think about that. I don't know if that answers your question.
At a macro level, it's something, yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about resilience, and from my perspective, being a teacher and being a student long ago, and it seems like there's kind of this evolution of thinking and buzzwords that come and go, and resilience was popular 5-6 years ago, but
God, I
it
hope
seems to be less popular now.
We need resilient people. I think it's still pretty good, yeah.
I think I understand what you're asking, Jake, which is if we create a system that has so many supports for students, how are they going to, if we're just continuing to put the safety net under them, how are they going to actually work through something on their own to build up that resilience? If this teacher keeps coming in and oh, I see you didn't get it when I said it that way, let me try it this way. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the onus is on the teacher. And from a parent's perspective, they may feel the same way. My student isn't doing well because the teacher isn't, providing whatever. When I hate to bring up when I was a kid, but when I was a kid, my parents were like, it's you. It's not your teacher, it's you. You need to change. Yeah. Which was helpful in the long run.
Yeah.
So
I had that conversation with one of my kids earlier this week.
Oh.
I tell you about it.
I think I may have had that conversation with my 18-year-old often right now.
I think you're spot on with that. That makes sense to me. And just to bring it back to the opportunity gap was what my mindset would be. The demographics are not what need to change. And when we see the gaps in the way that we see the gaps, in the way that we see the gaps in our district, in our state, and in our country, that's something we have to change what we are doing from a student population lens, not from that individual student. Absolutely. Whatever needs to spark something for that young person and whoever they're looking to needs to continue to happen. The village needs to step in and be supportive in ways that also maintain solid boundaries. We have, this is a side tangent, but we wrestle all the time in our district, me personally with our tennis teams, about truancy, for example. It's this is the hard stop end and we need to bring in accountability. But what does that mean for this population or that population? How can we rethink how we introduce accountability in ways that aren't criminalizing copy? So I think it's just also how we reframe what we're thinking about when we talk about accountability. Is not the word that you use, but also just a little bit of at the end of the day, right? That kid has to walk through that door and they've got to make that decision. Somebody's got to get in their head and be you got to get in there and get this. So I think about it, in two different ways. One is from the opportunity gap, we're looking at population response. And the other is the individual student, which I think is going to be as dynamic and different as could possibly be.
Just jump on that, because Jay, you made me think of something that I've wondered about with the Flexible Pathways program. And I think this is going a little bit to your point, but is there anything, given that there's so much ability to tailor your education in a way that, aspirationally, it would be how do you challenge yourself to the maximum level of reasonableness at every stage? But in reality, it could be how do I just like have a really easy semester this time? And is there anything systemically about the flexible pathways program that could sort of allow for that outcome, right? Where someone might say, rather than sort of take the harder course, I might just kind of tailor my program to be easy and so I can mail it in this semester.
I'd have Matt, we can have Matt McLean come. I think that goes into a deeper.
Yeah, it's not
the
the
side.
opportunity.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
the
it's
side
much-
tangent. So let's have Matt McLean come in to talk about flexible pathways. But I'm gonna give you one story. I'm gonna give you one
Yeah.
story. And this may just be a one-time thing, but I don't know. So my child is going to college next year, right? He's a senior, so I know lots of seniors at the moment. And another child I know is the Green and Gold Scholar. Took every hard class there was at school. And obviously excelled at it because the Green and Gold is the top student in a school building, right? Their school has 0 flexible pathway opportunities. It's a very traditional place, but probably very similar to what you and I went to as kids. And so this person did not do any kind of outside flexible pathways, very, very into theater, you know, so had had a co-curricular, but theater was pretty much it. And he applied to Yale, and this is the top student, didn't get in. Took every AP class they could, right? We had a kiddo a couple of years ago who took a lot of top classes, what you would call AP classes here at MHS, and also built in lots of flexible pathways around different pursuits that they were interested in. That kid got into Yale early decision with a free ride, right? They had the same scores. They were like on paper, they were the same kid, except the flexible pathway piece and the variation of what that child showed interest in and went and did and went after was probably the difference between one kid getting into Yale and the other one not.
And I love the program.
Yeah.
Like everything I've seen about it, I have no doubt in its value. The one thing I wonder, and kind of going to Jake's sort of motivation idea, is whether and how we make sure that the optionality that we afford our students accounts for differential motivations, even where it's not an opportunity gap situation. It's just different kids for whatever reason with different motivational levels and are using it in the way that the student you're talking about used it, right? Which is very challenging, you know.
Yeah.
It's a question I've been thinking about, and the way you phrased your question, Jake, made me kind of think about it, but it probably isn't an opportunity gap thing. It's just something that I want
No,
to raise up.
let's have Matt and the team come in probably next year, but let's have Matt and the team come in. They haven't come in a couple of years, so let's have Matt and the team come in. I know that they're very involved in all of the processes, like with the kids and having conversations with them. So here are some examples of both celebrations and things we need to consider. Now, remember, we're not going into detail here. You'll see more detail in the next couple of board meetings. Nick, you want to speak to these?
Yeah, and this is not meant to be a all-encompassing data report in any way. We just wanted to like provide a few examples of what we've just talked about with the opportunity gap, how it shows up in our district with just a few data points. So the first one up here on the top left is chronic absenteeism. We as a district moved from 31% of our students were chronically absent down to 20% over 3 years. When we track that same rate.
Right? Thank you, Jim. Yes.
You should follow me around. When we track that same metric for chronic absenteeism for young people who are economically disadvantaged, we saw that number go from 48 to 26. So there is still a 6 percentage point gap in what we're talking about here, but that's down from 18%. So we're talking about closing the gap in this context. That's exactly what we're talking about. If we look at young people that are on a 504 plan here at the high school, and the high school will be here in a couple of weeks to share a little bit more, but we do our social emotional learning assessments twice a year where we're asking questions to students that are responding. And students that have 504 plans at Montpelier High School responded really well to strong self-management and class preparedness. When we look at questions around adaptive thinking and strategic confidence, we're seeing a 9 percentage point gap in how their peers are responding versus how they're responding. When we look at teacher relationships at Union Elementary, 67% of students across the school responded favorably to having positive relationships with their teachers.
Just to be clear, that's the third and fourth graders.
Third and fourth
Those that
grade
don't know,
only,
it's a
thank you.
self-report, Right.
And students with IEPs are reporting favorable rates at 56%. So we're seeing a gap there, right? Like there's something there that we want to unpack. The last one here that we'll highlight is at Montpelier High School. When we look at the core course scores over the years, we've seen the GPA gap nearly cut in half in 1 year. So Jason, Emily, and Matt are doing an incredible job here. But we saw in 23-24 where young people with IEPs had a GPA with their core classes around like 2.6 versus I think it was like 3.5 or something like that for students not on an IEP. That gap has reduced dramatically to going from almost a full percentage point gap in their GPA now down to well below half. So we look at these gaps pretty intensively and we try to unpack what's going on. This really does get incorporated into our continuous improvement plans, which the principals will be here in a couple of weeks to share with you all what they're thinking. But we do deep data dives with all of this. And this is just an example of how these gaps do show up in our district, what we've seen in some situations. We have a ton of room to grow and we need to be better for sure. And we can't do this work from like gut reaction or I feel like, you know, young people experiencing homelessness are struggling with it. It's like, no, we actually have data and we need to be looking closely at the data and monitoring it over the years to find out, is what we're doing working? If so, double down. If it's not working, how are we changing course and making sure that we're meeting young people in the ways that they need to be met?
How do you figure out like what correlates directly to something like GPA gap?
Yeah, it's hard to exactly do direct correlations, and you know, like whatever, like we can't really get into causation when we're looking at these things, right? However, we can see if there's growth through the data. We can see if that gap is closing. And when I talk to Emily and Jason, we have conversations about, hey, we're noticing this. Students with who are on a plan are like closing. What are we doing differently? What have you all been doing differently? And they're going to share much more of that in a couple of weeks, because as we map out some of the gaps that we're seeing that we're not seeing close, the principals across the district and our APs have been looking really closely at a lot of these numbers. And they're now in the process of developing their plans of how to address this. So an example at Union Elementary is when we're looking at young people who have an IEP and their sense of teacher relationships, which is on here. One of the things that we're wrestling with and asking questions and working with our teams about is, you know, what does it mean when a young person at the elementary level goes on to an IEP, because that's oftentimes when a student goes from not having an IEP to having an IEP. Does that change their service provider all of a sudden? Do they have a completely new teacher relationship? And why are we just pulling the plug on a solid relationship they had with an interventionist and then going to a special educator? Is that having an impact? So we are asking a lot of questions. I don't know if that kind of gets at it, but we are doing a deep dive. So they make plans. And then with our continuous improvement model, we've got monthly data checks that we say, are we seeing anything happen? Are we seeing anything happen? And if we're going 3 months and we haven't seen anything happen, we got to unpack that and figure out why and maybe change course. If we're going 3 months and we're like, oh, there's something brewing here, double down. So in our continuous improvement model across the district, it's moving from what has been with our CRP process, this 2-year check-in. We'll check in on it in 2 years. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. To no, we need to know like every month and in some cases every week what's going on. So chronic absenteeism is a perfect example. We look at that every day. We know exactly what's happening, and we'll say, whoa, something happened yesterday. Oh, it's the day after Halloween. That's the worst. You know, yeah. So there's just so many different ways. So we're never going to have direct causation without evaluators here. But I think we can start to see some correlation when we're looking at the data closely.
Another really quick example is Katie Chabot, who teaches biology here at the high school, who wanted to increase her wanted to decrease the opportunity gap and that she was seeing in her scores with her kids. So she went into this intensive learning with Emily Carley, who's our literacy interventionist, around how to teach academic vocabulary differently. And so she does this huge thing, way more than she ever did before, on academic vocabulary and everything she teaches. And it has made such a startling difference in the outcomes that she sees from kids and how they're able to talk about the biology that so double down, get her up in front of her colleagues and talk about how she's teaching academic vocabulary in such a very intentionally and targeted way. And, it's that kind of work of making a change, right? Like that was just good teaching, noticing kids didn't have it, right? And changing the way she taught. And now she does it a completely different way. It's very intentional and structured. And other colleagues are starting to do it as well. It's just super cool to see.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Thanks,
you.
Debbie. More to
Good to
come
meet you
in using
and see everyone.
this knowledge in a couple weeks. All right, so we're moving on to the long-range financial planning. We're not actually doing any planning tonight. This is our chance to see some very well-educated projections, but not firm numbers of what it looks like for the next couple of years, as far as a couple of our very large budget items, personnel and facilities.
All right, I'm gonna say to my Anna that behind the scenes that Mike Concessi is getting on now, so make sure that he gets moved to panelist, please. I can't see anymore. So this is future financial forecasting. As Tim found in a very close read of one of the policy documents, we were missing this piece.
It's true.
And so we've been talking about how we can do this in the landscape of Vermont education finance, which is not easy to do. But I do want to reiterate that please don't pull this slideshow up in like future budget presentations when we have actual numbers and say, you said this on this day in May 6th, because it could be different, right? These are forecasts. Just to remind everybody, Jen and I made this beautiful chart that has less arrows than the first one did.
So colorful.
Yeah. Of 4 pieces that we want to think about that doesn't really have to do with the state factors too much, that there's salaries and benefits that we can think about. There's student programming and supports of what we value here in Montpelier-Roxbury. There are facility needs, and then there's taxpayer willingness to pay right now, the way we have it structured. So I'll let you dig into that when you have a little bit more time, but I kind of like the graphic. It's a little different than the first one I had that had spelling typos in it. So let's talk about personnel and labor projections, or investing in our people. So Mike Concessi, who's our business manager, did some forecasting around these areas. So just as a reminder, our MREA are our teachers, special educators, social workers, counselors, nurses. We currently have 146.4 FTE across the district that are under the MREA contract. And you can see the actuals right there and the forecasted amounts. These forecasted for the MREA through FY28 are closer to the actuals because we now have a negotiated agreement. This is using the new negotiated agreement that we just finished up. But it is assuming that we keep current FTEs this way they are, right? The administration and central office coordination, we have 22.75 current FTEs. So the actuals are there for FY26. And we have what would be actuals for FY27, assuming we have the same FTEs. The FY28 forecast is in blue, mainly because we'll be negotiating with administrators and central office coordination. We're all on kind of the same cycle of contract. So that would be a negotiation year, or they are rather. MRESSA are instructional assistants. And then there's the others. Our food service are not part of the MRESSA, but we have them following the salary scale that our instructional assistants are under, just for ease and knowledge for them, predicting what they're going to get from one year to the next. And also some of our after-school specialists. So we just finished their contract negotiations. So those are closer, assuming that current FTEs stay solid. I'm getting a. Send the mic the Zoom link. Sorry.
And just for reference, that looks like about half of it, right? Like when you think 16.9 budget being around, was it this year 34, 35?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's 34 and change. Yeah. And then AFSMI, our administrative assistants, our technology people and our custodians. There's currently 26 FTEs. You can see the actuals and we will be negotiating in FY 28 as well.
Look at this is wage expenditure.
Yes,
forecast,
this is just salary.
so it doesn't include benefits.
No, that's on the next side.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so healthcare projections. We made the assumption, I asked Mike to go back 5 years and just write the average healthcare for increase for 5 years, and it's at 10%. So FY 26, you can see our actuals and where it's going to grow across will be up over 6 million, assuming that our FTEs stay the same, people's healthcare nominations stay the same, and all those things. The statutory costs at the bottom there is things like FICA that we have to pay that start adding up over time. So you can see what those numbers are going to be for FY 26 through FY 28.
And those aren't in the bars. That's
No.
on top of the bars.
Yeah. Yep. So if we move on to capital and infrastructure, the board knows full well that we'll be starting our windows project this summer as soon as we
Right.
get kiddies out of there. And so the bottom picture there is Main Street Middle School. Of course, they won't be getting all new windows. They're working on just that bottom row, the level of the ground row. Because those are egresses and they're hard to open in certain times of the year. And it can't be if they're egresses. So major window replacement is slated for UES and MSMS. We're using our capital plan to do that. And it's going to be great. They're going to be lovely new windows. Here's the broad range of our capital plan. This is assuming 350,000 is added each year. It's just making that blanket assumption that the board's going to decide to do that each year. So you can see where we're at and where we're planning on spending money. You know, we're asked, what would you spend money on once the window replacement is done? I'd rather think let's get the window replacement done and see where we're at and what year we're in. However, this next slide, this is more for our newer board members, just so you have it in one place. If you look at the facilities report and the facilities master plans, you'll see lists of projects that are potential for future. In those reports, they're pretty long documents. So just put your feet up for a while on a rainy day and flip through those. We always have a facilities report to the board in the fall, mainly because it sets us up for budget kind of thinking around this. So our total forecast here, if we're looking at salaries, healthcare, the miscellaneous benefits, and assuming 350,000 goes to the capital reserve each year, you can see our totals across the board. So with this forecast to FY 28, it's about 11% increase overall to these factors, assuming nothing changes.
And just to remind us, the total at the bottom there is not the total district budget. It's just the total
Right.
for these large
parts of the budget.
ticket items. And then in addition to this, there's transportation and there's after school and there's special ed and there's.
Yep.
And then there's also some non-tax sources of income. So this isn't a full picture. This is our first attempt at doing some forecasting that will help inform us when we get to budget season, but giving us a sense of it when we're not actually in this sort of like crunch of budget season where we have to make decisions. Not only is that, I think that's the reason it's in the policy, you know, is to give, so the board has this more sort of like take a step back and see where things are at when we're not being needing to make immediate decisions.
Is it possible to put the rest of the budget and the stable and grow it at whatever you could grow at. So you could kind of see like what the FY 26 budget was and what the FY 27 and 28 would be. Because this is what, like 2/3 of it roughly here?
Yeah, but the challenge is, you mean the chart, like the dynamic chart we use at budget season?
I'm sorry, no, like total budget, like it's for FY 26, it wasn't 23.5.
No, it's 34.
32.5 or whatever. So. You know,
I mean, I could, I wouldn't do it right now.
Yeah, I think you could to say, and then maybe do some kind of like, oh, we think that will increase. Each one of those things, yeah, on average will increase 3%. I don't know. Year over year.
It's challenging though, because you would have to project revenues too, right? To
Well, and enrollment
and I think though, as we were talking about this, getting to that level of detail, I think starts building a lot of assumptions into and so it just, at least as I was thinking about it, it made me wonder, does it stop being sort of a useful thing where this is kind of focusing on what are the big pieces that we know or kind of have a sense of at this point. I think that's why this approach, but opened up. This is a first, so I appreciate you guys putting your heads together and figuring out how to put it together. I think it helps kind of prepare for next fall.
I mean, back to the napkin, we're looking just this portion of the budget, it's 5% increase over the next couple of years, each year over year.
without knowing enrollment, dollar yield, CLA.
Just the
Mhm.
salaries, healthcare, other benefits.
Yeah, I don't think Jake's asking necessarily for like, what's the projected tax rate? But I think what you're saying is what would the general, how much could our general education, our general budget grow, right?
Yeah, but maybe that it is too much detail, and I think Scott, like if you just base it on the total forecast numbers, like it's probably the case that the budget is going to move in the same direction, which would be 5% in the coming year, and then 5.5% the year after that.
Okay.
So I'm satisfied with that.
Jake is satisfied.
Thanks, Scott.
Hey, Libby,
Yes.
on the capital plan slide.
Yeah.
How come you stopped like summing the values for total expenditures in like 31, 32, 33 on that second to last line?
I'll let Mike speak to that. He should be on here at this point, I believe.
No good reason. I mean, the other question I had is like, how confident are you in those prices for like windows in 33? Because I just bought a window.
Yeah, me too.
And forgot to hit order on a date, and they're like, oh, it's gone up by 18%. What? Like, are those locked in? Do we have contracts, or are those? Like,
Yeah, we do have contract, but Michael. Are you there?
Oh, I just saw it. There we go.
You don't need to raise your hand. You can just speak. Wait, hold on. I gotta move you over. Sorry, you can't just speak.
I'm so glad you raised your hand, Mike.
Talking permitted. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, just to answer the question, it's just an oversight. Why the expenditures aren't being additive at the bottom. We were asked to go out a long time, and I just forgot to drag the formula over. That's all it is, guys.
It means like, I just didn't know if there was logic for it or not, but that's fine.
No, that's a good catch. I'll fix it for the next time.
And Justin, regarding Windows, if I recall from last time we talked with Tom about it, I think the contracts that we have in place are for like, you see the Windows for 27. And I think they give us an option at the same price for 28, maybe 29, but not beyond that. So like anything else beyond that, there's no contract that's going to be locking in a price in 33 for a window. But I do think, and with some of the good work that the team did, there's we're only doing some of the windows now, and we're not committed to further purchases, but they did negotiate an option, which is what I thought was really good.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And then just confirming what I think is happening here there's a lot of other things on this list, but I think
some of them have happened.
They've happened. That's why there's those rows.
I can
columns,
I
those
can
columns. that
past
fit.
rows so I can fit it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not as if we're saying the MSMS stair tower is somewhere as a future, that one's already been done.
It could have
probably.
been, yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's on
Yeah.
within the facilities project. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So this is a project that a spreadsheet that I inherited, and I'm just trying to make sure that if you asked me, Mike, what did we spend in 25, 24, and 23,
Sure.
and what was it on? It's there, so I don't have to research it. That's all.
Yep.
And I think the other thing worth mentioning is this isn't sort of an exhaustive list of all of the sort of capital renovations we're doing. Like as Tom's doing the window projects this summer, he's going to be hitting some classrooms and areas where there's already going to be disruption because of the windows. He'll be doing some flooring, he'll be, this, that, and the other thing. So, I mean, these are the major ones that are generally going to be capital funded. But
The other ones are funded out of local funds.
the others are local, but they're still those
Correct.
sort of projects that
Yeah.
are capital in nature, that are going to be going on at the same time.
And while we're still on this slide, I'll say, Rhett and I visited the other group of sixth graders last Tuesday, and we got questions about the playground. So our students are holding us accountable to the plan to renovate that playground. I just
It
want to
is
make sure we are
Not
in the hot
today.
seat.
Yeah. It is on order and on
Good.
its way, hopefully.
Library is, showing us up.
Is that what? Yes, a playscape.
Oh,
Yes.
Cool. Okay, and then just the last one, just keeping in mind statewide impacts that affect our budget. Because I can't leave this. We don't know what CLA, I mean, we got an idea of what CLAs probably will be. We don't know if the state is moving to a foundation formula or when they are going to do it. We don't know what healthcare costs increase are going to be. We don't know what the dollar yield will be because it's based on our economy. We don't know if we'll be forced to merge or voluntary merge or we'll do no merging. We don't know any of that. And we don't know what our enrollment, we have good enrollment predictions, but Country Club Road could impact that if Montpelier decided to build different types of housing there. So that could be increasing enrollment and increasing students based on that project. And then I called Jake because I was told to say, could you speak to statewide factors? That get put online. Look at how excited he is.
We are close to his bedtime.
I know.
So, or maybe past.
I mean, only the healthcare costs, they maybe actually teachers' health insurance has the increases been going down. It was only 7% this year compared to double digits prior. So maybe that'll continue in a positive way. We just got an email about that actually from VSBA, which you should take a look at. And then on the dollar yield, it's looking like the legislature is going to spend a lot of one-time money this year to try to buy down tax rates, which makes for a bad situation next year. When we're building our budget, it would make the yield look very low by comparison, which is a bad thing. So you would see like a snap back up on taxes. And it's unclear if the general fund is going to have another big surplus to pump into the ed fund next year. You never know. So, I mean, there's only two things, and then there's all that Act 73 stuff, which is still up in the air. And I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it wouldn't be till FY 30 or FY 31. Although they might ask us to study merging like on the senior side. That seems to be happening.
Do you know where the spending cap is now, and is it likely to go?
Yeah, there's something called excess spending threshold in this system where if you spend what you spend per pupil, if it's too high, if it's over a certain level, you get double counted on the overage. And it's
When it comes
currently
to taxes.
for tax calculation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's currently like 118% of this average number that they use that grows with inflation. So, and we're not that close to it at the moment, I don't think, because we're kind of middle of the road spender. But the Senate wanted to drop it to 112%, which would bring it closer to us. The House seems not so hot on that, but it is going to probably come down. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on it because it's a penalty. Like, don't go over this or else you'll get double taxed. And it looks like they're gonna allow recent bonding for school construction to be exempted from the excess spending penalty, which means for us that other districts who are high spenders, not us, but they recently decided to build whatever and they bonded for it. And now they won't be penalized. But the whole system is self-balancing. So it just means that we will pay what they would have paid in penalty. Like the rest of the districts will pay. That's all that it does. But that looks like that was in the Senate's yield bill and the House is probably going to go along with that. So that puts more pressure on us to pay for the new high school in Woodstock, for example. That's the big one. So that's just a curiosity thing and not a major tax impact thing.
Thank you.
No problem.
Just one more question. When do we get a spring view from, is it NEPC that does our enrollment projections? Or
We
is
get
it-
that in the fall
that's-
usually, I think.
Okay, we'll get our next view on general enrollment projections outside like
Yeah.
something one-off.
Yeah, I think it's yearly, but it could be bi-yearly. Twice a year. I think it's yearly though.
I think that's it then.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's move on to the Q3 financial report.
I'll start and then kick to Mike.
Sure.
Does that sound reasonable? So this was a relatively uneventful Q3 financial report as we were going through it. Generally, everything is remaining on track. A couple things to highlight on the revenue side. There's a pretty strong opportunity to exceed our budgeted interest income by a not insignificant amount. I think Mike's been managing our money pretty well, and so it looks like we could have an extra 75K coming in there. Most everything else is, I think, either smaller or coming in as expected, or expected to come in as expected at this point. A lot of things come in at the end or will ultimately align on the expense side. On the expenditure side, just a couple things at the bottom to note. I'm going to note one other thing too that wasn't really part of the report, but debt service, we spend, kind of going to Jake's point, we're spending $750,000 every year on debt service, most on previous bonds. And so, one of the things that I really like about the $350,000 investment we make every year in the capital fund is kind of, we're going to need to spend money one way or the other to maintain our facilities and to do it upfront without the need to incur an interest expense. And in fact, earn a small return on, I think, is a service to the district and its taxpayers. So I think it's a really prudent step that we've been taking. I'll get off my soapbox on that. The food service transfer, that is an expenditure that's running real high. I'll let Mike talk to that if he wants to. And then you'll see the capital, the number that jumps out at you, the capital projects fund transfer, 722%. All that is because in July of this year, I think is when our decision to move $1.5 million of fund balance out of the fund balance into the capital fund, it shows up there, so that it's not anything weird or surprising. It's just how that decision of the board showed up. So I was satisfied with the third quarter report. If other committee members want to add any color, or Mike, before questions, go for it.
I can make one clarification, Tim. You did a great job. First of all, thank you. I just want to make a comment on the revenue side to be really clear. A negative number in the balance of variance column is a good thing. So,
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is we're more than just the 75,000 of interest income ahead of the game. We are on track, both on the special ed extraordinary reimbursement and the state transportation. These are the same issues I tried to identify during the budget building process to say we've been a little conservative in our revenue projections. And so what I'm trying to explain is we're about 400,000 ahead of schedule on the revenue, primarily driven by one, extraordinary, that's ahead of the game by 200,000. State aid trans is 123,000 ahead of the game. And then interest income, to Tim's point, is 75. So you're 400 on the good guy side from a revenue perspective.
That would buy an awful lot of chocolate milk. So I think we're set there. The fancy chocolate milk.
Tim's already spending it.
Easy. But actually, just to take it one more step further, as you mentioned, Mike, or at least clarify or confirm what I'm assuming. Because as you mentioned, in this budget process to establish the FY27 budget, you got more precise with revenue estimates, which means next year, when we're looking at the Q3 financial report, we're unlikely to see $400,000 or so on the good guy side. It'll probably be more.
Spot on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Spot
Can't
on. I'm
expect this
hoping.
every year, Jim. Just, be
Yeah,
clear.
this is a one-time phenomenon. We're getting the goodness now, which is great. It's helping. It's helping offset, for example, on the other side of the equation, the food service budget amount has been, you could argue, grossly understated, right? We're running about almost three times that, and it's well worth it because we probably have one of the best food service programs in the state. So, I think I'm trying to replicate or at least represent what the real cost is, and I'm just showing you that. So yes, the interest income covers up for the budget miss on the food service trans.
Yep.
Don't we always under budget on food service because a lot of families,
Well, now it's universal meals, so.
right, which
that-
used to be funded, no, and then it wasn't funded, which wouldn't we want to add that to?
It's funded still.
Yes.
Universal meals is still funded, yeah.
Universal Meals has been around for a couple years now, and what I'm saying is, this phenomenon, what you're seeing, has been going on several years. I'm trying to rectify it, and it is in the fiscal 27 budget cycle.
Oh.
So it's fixed going forward, is what I'm trying to explain. We won't be understated next year on anything. Revenue or expense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll talk to you in the next.
But when you say funded, it's funded by the district, it's not funded by state. It was funded by the state and then it wasn't, so it has to be funded by.
The meals are funded by the state, the employees are not.
Oh, okay.
The
Gotcha.
Employees, the equipment, the meals are.
So, to be clear, this 285 number in the encumbrance side, what that's saying is that is the net amount to run the food service program after all the federal and state meal reimbursements are made.
Great. Any other questions from board members? Okay, is there a motion to approve the Q3 financial report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, guys. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, fantastic. So we'll move on to policy monitoring.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
We are monitoring policy C10, prevention of hazing, harassment, and bullying, and F2, non-discriminatory mascots and school branding. That's quite a pair. Good night. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
More bad stuff to do. Go ahead.
Let's start with any questions or comments or thoughts board members have on the monitoring reports for either of those policies.
wondering, about, this is the C10, harassment, hating and bullying of students. Libby, could you talk a little bit more about, how this shows up? Needing to, talk about the difference between constitutionally protected free speech versus creating a hostile environment?
Yeah, that's the tricky one, right? So we have to figure out how to teach that. I mean, that's basically as just bottom line as it can get, yes, particularly for our adolescents on a. Because it is mentioned in the policy and we just, when I was talking to the assistant principals, is I was going through the monitoring report. My assistant principal here, Emily, at the high school was saying that they do something around the difference between constitutionally protected free speech and the harassing speech in like a roadshow that they do every fall. Like that's part of the slides and it's part of the instruction. She's like, but it's in the fall. You know, like it's not, social studies classes may go over it, you know, but it's not something that's more intentional than that. And our middle school assistant principal, Jess Wells, was like, yeah, no, we should probably start adding that into our conversations with kids and advisory. You know, we should figure out ways to do that. So we're just not there yet with kids, and probably because I would be honest, we're not there yet as adults either, being very clear on that. Got it.
Yeah. Other questions? All right, is there a motion to approve these two monitoring reports? So moved. Any, is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, thanks, everybody. So now we will move into executive session to discuss the appointment of the student reps to the board for next year. Who would like to make these motions for us?
I can.
Great.
I move to find that that we move into executive session because premature general public knowledge regarding the appointment of a public officer clearly places the board at a substantial disadvantage.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, second motion.
I move to enter into executive session for the purpose of the appointment of a public officer according to VSA Title I, Section 313A3.
Thanks, Casey. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we'll move into room 126 for executive session.